All right, let's just jump right in. We have to talk about global chaos. I mean, it really feels like the world is pulling apart at the seams, right? It's confusing. But what if there's a better way to understand all of it? Today, we're going to look at a brand new map for this confusing world. And it all comes from the work of Professor Noah Zerbe.
It's a question that's probably on your mind a lot. You see the headlines, all the conflicts, the economic craziness, the politics, and it is so easy to feel like we're just heading for a cliff. But what if it isn't just a collapse? What if all this chaos is actually a transition? According to Professor Zerbe, we might be witnessing the messy, super complicated birth of a completely new global system. And lucky for us, he offers a guide to help make sense of it.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we'll get a handle on why the world's in such a state of flux. Then, we'll take a look at the old world order and figure out why it's breaking down. After that, we'll get into Zerbe's really brilliant new idea, the multiplex world. And finally, we'll ask the big question. What does this all mean for us? Sound good? Let's do it.
So, first up, a world in flux. To really understand this new map, we've got to grasp a core idea from Professor Zerbe's field, which is this fascinating thing called the English School of International Relations. It's a huge piece of the puzzle.
Okay, so the key term to get our heads around here is anarchical society. And I know it sounds, well, chaotic, but it's really not. What Zerbe argues is that even without some big global government bossing everyone around, countries still form a society. You know, they have shared norms, they talk to each other through diplomacy, they agree on certain international laws. So here's the kicker. The chaos we're seeing right now, it might not be a total breakdown. It might just be the rules of that society going through a massive fundamental change.
So, if the world has always had some kind of society, what did the old one look like? That brings us right to Section 2. Before this new map, we had an old one, but Zerbe doesn't just describe it. He takes a really critical look at who that old map was actually working for.
For most of our lives, really, the world ran on something called the Liberal International Order, or LIO for short. Just think of it as the system set up after 1945, led mostly by the United States and its allies, with big institutions like the UN and the World Bank. For a very long time, that was the map everyone was using.
But this is where Zerbe's take gets really interesting. A more traditional view, what they call realism, would just look at who has the biggest army. Zerbe uses a totally different lens. He asks a much sharper question. Who did this system actually benefit? And to do that, he brings in some powerful ideas from post-colonialism and feminism to question the whole setup.
And this all leads to a really provocative question that Zerbe puts out there. He asks, was this so-called stable order ever really stable for everyone? Or was it just a temporary thing, a historical blip that basically put Western interests first, way ahead of the global South? It's a question that makes you rethink the entire post-war era.
Which leads us right to Section 3, the cracks in the system. Why is that old map basically useless now? What happened to tear it all up?
Well, according to Zerbe, it was a series of massive shocks that showed just how weak the system was. First, you had the 2008 financial crash. That showed the economic model was built on shaky ground. Then the COVID pandemic, a total failure of global cooperation. And now these major conflicts that show institutions like the UN Security Council are just completely deadlocked. These weren't just random bad luck. They were signs of a system failing.
And get this, while the old order was crumbling, a totally new main character walked onto the world stage, the Global South. We're talking about nations like India, Brazil, South Africa. They are not just following the script anymore. They're doing something Zerbe calls multi-alignment, and you've got to understand this part. It means they're not just picking a side, not just Team USA, Team China, or Team Russia. Oh no. A country might be buying Russian oil, American weapons, and Chinese technology, all at the same time. It's all about balancing everyone to get the best possible deal for themselves. They are absolutely writing their own story now.
So, if the old map is torn to shreds and we have these new actors on stage, what does the new map even look like? Let's get into it. Section 4, the multiplex world.
And here it is, the big idea, the multiplex world. The name is perfect. Think about it. When you go to a multiplex cinema, there isn't just one big movie playing, right? There are tons of different movies, each with its own plot, its own audience, its own vibe. That's our world today. Multiple centers of power, no single country calling all the shots, and all these diverse cultures and systems running at the same time.
Now, it's really important to see how different this is from what you usually hear. A lot of people talk about a new Cold War, right? Like it's just the US versus China all over again. But Zerbe says, nope, it's way more complicated than that. In the multiplex world, the rules for trade are different from the rules for climate change, which are totally different from the rules for security. It's not one big rivalry, it's a bunch of different games happening all at once.
So, why is this idea so powerful? Well, it gives us a much-needed middle ground. It saves us from thinking our only choices are a simple US-China smackdown or, complete global chaos. It actually reflects the messy reality of our world, where things like technology and demographics are just as important as who has the most missiles.
Of course, every theory has its weak spots, and the multiplex idea has a big one. You gotta ask, if there's no global policeman, no single dominant power to lay down the law, doesn't that just mean more conflict, more instability? Does this whole complex system just fall apart?
And that question leads us to our final section. What happens next? If we're living in this new multiplex world, what does that actually feel like? Zerbe has a really powerful word for this moment in time.
This quote just nails the feeling of our era, doesn't it? The old system, the one that ran the world since 1945. It's gone. It's dead. But this new multiplex world, it isn't fully formed yet. We are stuck right in the middle.
And that's the final huge idea Zerbe leaves us with, the interregnum. It's a term for that gap in time when an old king has died, but the new one hasn't been crowned yet. An old order is dying and a new one has yet to be born. It's a time of huge uncertainty and risk, yeah, but also incredible possibility. So the question for all of us is, are we living in the interregnum? And if we are, what we do right now could decide what that new world looks like. What do you think?